inside of the chat. Welcome to the Only Football Podcast. A little bit of technical difficulties going on there. Of course, not at home, not in the studio, don't have my lights, don't have my mic, don't have everything in my background that I would like. But Aaron Rodgers was traded tonight. And whether we have everything or not, the show must go on. So Aaron Rodgers has become a New York Jet. It has been a long anticipated trade waiting on the Jets to acquire him officially. And like I said in the last little bit that we just did, people were, criticizing the Jets for being too greedy. They were criticizing the Packers for being, trying to get too much value out of an aging quarterback. And Jen just said, there we go, that's better. How's your trip going? Thank you. It's going really good. It's been a busy trip. Not really a vacation, but because it's been so eventful, but you know, it's just it's just it's with Murphy's Law. I'm so busy. I'm getting so much stuff done. I don't have my perfect setup with my mic and everything. And Aaron Rodgers, this is when he decides to get traded. Not, of course, it wouldn't happen when I'm at home in the studio. It would happen in the middle of a random Monday before the draft, which the draft, ladies and gentlemen, we are getting close. We're only 3 days away from the draft, and most people thought that Aaron Rodgers would be traded during the draft. I thought the first round pick would probably include Aaron Rodgers in a trade. And no, it happens the Monday before. So it looks like the Packers and Jets were able to come to some sort of agreement. Now, I'm not going to lie, when I first read this, I thought that, thank you, Tyler. I thought, my brother's in the chat saying, I love your dedication, proud of you. I actually thought, and I spoke to my brother who is a Packers fan, and he's been a Packers fan for our entire life. How did he feel about the trade? Well, he said basically the Packers got shafted and they didn't get much value for him. Now, when I looked at, and I'll read it now, the Packers got a first round pick, which was number 15 overall, and a fifth round pick, which is number 170, in exchange for New York's first rounder, which was number 13. So the Packers swap first round picks. Okay. So New York, this is, I had to read this 5 times to fully understand that the Packers didn't really get a first round pick from the Jets. They're swapping first round picks. And not only that, they're swapping pick 13 and pick 15. And if you're the Packers, this is a this isn't a good deal. I agree with Tyler. The Packers only moved up 2 spots. Now they got the second round pick. They got a 2023 second round pick and a sixth round pick, as well as a conditional 2024 pick pending that Rodgers plays at least 65% of the Jets snaps. But when I look at this, wide brushstroke here, the first thing that comes to my mind is the Packers didn't receive much for Aaron Rodgers. Now, we saw last year Russell Wilson get traded to the Denver Broncos, and we unfortunately saw the Seattle Seahawks pick for our first round pick last year, and then the Broncos completely sucked. And now this year, when we get to pick whatever it is, number 6, number 5, the Seattle Seahawks are going to pick again. And then when it's the second round, the Seattle Seahawks pick again. The Broncos will be in the third round before they pick one player. Haven't had a first round pick in 2 years, all because of Russell Wilson. Aaron Rodgers is, a much better football player if we're just comparing last season than Russell Wilson. But Rodgers also has less of a commitment than Russell Wilson had. Russ said that he wanted to play for, the next, I think it was 10 years, he said, when he, joined. And Rodgers was 90% retired before he went into the dark. So when it comes to the negotiation, I understand that the Packers can't get, multiple first round picks because Rodgers has kind of been a little flaky. So I just still think that there was a scenario where the Jets wouldn't have a first round pick this year and they would have given it to Green Bay. And I still would have considered that fair for one of the greatest talents in the NFL to this day. If this was last year or the year before last, he would be a back to back NFL MVP. Would they have gotten the first then? Did his value really go down that much in this last season? Because I mean, just the eyeball test watching him on TV, he doesn't look like he digressed very much. It looked like Devontae Adams was in Las Vegas. It looked like he didn't have any receivers, and Tyler alluded to it against the Vikings, where the very first pass, week one, went right through the hands. I don't think that was Watson. It might have been Dobbs, or it might no, I think it was Watson. And from the very get go, this team was just not firing, at all. There was no chemistry. Regardless, I still think Aaron Rodgers is worth a first round pick, and all they did was swap first round picks. So if it would have been like the Packers were picking at 32 and the Jets were picking at 7, that's a really decent swap. So you're swapping basically, the entire first round, but you're swapping number 15 and number 17 overall. You can't feel too great about that. Now, second round pick, there's plenty of talent in the second round, a lot of great players. So hopefully the Packers will. I mean, this draft, what the Packers do with the picks they've acquired from the Jets, will be held under a microscope for years. Now, if the Packers end up drafting 3, 4 busts in this draft, it's going to go down as Aaron Rodgers basically got traded and it cost them nothing. The Packers need to hit on this draft. So Ginger said, started my construction job back up for the season this weekend. It's rough getting back acquainted. I need to work out more in my off season instead of smashing Rangers. What's up, Tyler? I'm ready for Kyle to blow up. He puts in the work for sure. Basically, moved up 2 spots and got an extra second round pick, possibly another first next year too, though. Yeah, and Jinja, thank you for saying that. Absolutely. And that's why the first time I read this, and yeah, there is a lot going on in this trade, but and you could see why this trade took so long when you see, the fine print of it, but at the same time, I had to read it 3, 4 times to go, the Packers didn't even get a first round pick. I was, I was on the record saying if you're the Jets and you haven't had a franchise quarterback since what Mark Sanchez was considered maybe with Rex Ryan a franchise quarterback, but that lasted 3 years. You had Brett Favre. I mean, look how far back we have to go to even find somebody relevant playing the quarterback position. And the Jets, if they really believe that they're in a window, a Super Bowl window, then I said, why not give them 2 first round picks if that's what the Packers want? But this is why I don't work for the NFL. This is the business side because the Jets dug their heels into the ground. They didn't give 2 first round picks to Green Bay. And now they have Aaron Rodgers and they didn't even lose their first round pick. They just moved up 2 spots. They swapped. They don't have a second rounder. This is insane how they fleeced the Packers. I mean, there is, I mean, there's nothing here that really makes sense to me because I said, look, even if they gave 2 first round picks, okay, it would be like you drafted Aaron Rodgers with this year's pick. Okay. So, that's a wash. And then next year's first round pick, if the Packers, I mean, if the Jets really are in a Super Bowl window, then that means that the Jets, it's weird saying the Jets when I'm talking about Aaron Rodgers. So bear with me. That means the Jets should be deep into the playoffs. So that first round pick should be about between 28 and 32. So that's not as valuable as, some of the other first round picks that are higher up. And that's why I could justify it if I was the Jets. How much does it cost to, be in serious contention for a Lombardi trophy? 2 first round picks. Sure. I mean, that's what we're spending on them anyway. We're spending our picks to try to get a team that is willing and strong enough to make it to the Super Bowl. But here's the thing. You want your team to make it to the Super Bowl, and you want them to be in a position where they can, consistently go back. So you're adding pieces that will keep the team together for a long time. Right? Now you saw the Rams with the F them picks mentality where they, are willing to just throw all their picks out in order to get players. And guess what? It worked. They got a Super Bowl ring out of it. But look at them now. Now they're in, cap hell. They're getting rid of really good players. Um, this was a great move for the Jets. This was a terrible move for the Packers, in my opinion. I don't think they got enough. They should have added some players in there potentially. Um, I don't know if they would have parted ways with because the Packers, whoever said the Packers didn't have leverage, the Packers had leverage. They have Aaron Rodgers. That is the leverage. I don't see how the Packers walk away from this deal and with a second round pick. I mean, this is insane. This is a back to back Super Bowl MVP. This is unlike any of the other deals that we've seen with I mean, even Matthew Stafford went for more than Aaron Rodgers has gone to the Jets for. So Aaron Rodgers officially a Jet. It is going to take some time to really sink in. Um, Jinja saying, plus the Jets have like the 43rd anyway, basically see it as 2 second-round picks for Rodgers. Packers have to hit. If they're in cap hell, will they be able to re-sign Gary? I think his contract is coming up. So I looked into it, and the Jets' current roster right now won't fit Aaron Rodgers' cap hit. But they already, apparently, from what I've heard, from the same sources you probably hear it from, the Jets have already worked out the players that are going to be released when that time comes. So the Jets have been anticipating this, and when the time comes where they have to present their salary cap, or roster to the league, they're already on top of it, and there's going to be some people being cut in the near future from the Jets. And this was funny. MSNBC this is what was on their front page. By the way, I haven't heard any news from Aaron Rodgers in the last month or so. I saw him go on Pat McAfee and say he intends to play for the Jets. While everybody in the media was mad at Aaron Rodgers for holding it up, we find out on the Pat McAfee show that Rodgers hasn't been holding anything up. They haven't been able to come to an agreement between the Packers and the Jets. And by the way, did anyone apologize? No, because they don't care if they're, slandering on people because they just move on. They just don't like him. Nobody apologized. So anyway, a month goes by, we haven't heard anything from Aaron Rodgers, and then today the trade finally goes through. And this is the story on MSNBC from Deadspin. Aaron Rodgers is finally a Jet. Now, hopefully, he can leave us alone for a few months. What is with the obsession? I just find it really, really interesting how that is what you name your title. Hopefully, he can leave us alone. You guys are the ones that are false reporting every narrative and twisting it in the light, and then you get mad at your own peers for posting too many articles out about the guy. If you want, like, I just can't believe I've never seen a person hated like Aaron Rodgers is hated within. It's just the media. Everybody I talk to outside of the media doesn't feel that way. But if you lived in some kind of bubble and all you had to rely on was the media, you would think that this is the most hated man that has ever, put on a helmet and strapped up the chin strap ever. And it's just not the case. Everybody I talk to likes Aaron Rodgers, and it's just funny that these types of stories make it to the front page. Now, hopefully, he can leave us alone. Man, it sounds like there are a lot of people out there that seriously need to get some therapy or start paying Aaron Rodgers rent because he's living in their head, literally living in their head. And Jinja, I'm going to hit some of these chats. He said, I thought Green Bay was in cap trouble. I didn't know about the Jets. Nice insight. My apologies, Kyle. My apologies. What's wrong, Steve? My apology. Did you do something, Steve? What I don't know what you're apologizing for, my man. And wait for Steve to come back on that. So obviously that's the huge night. Now this Thursday we normally would do our trivia, but we're not going to do the trivia. We're going to be live for the draft. And I'll be back home for that. And let's see, there is a couple stories that have come out, which I don't even like repeating these stories. This is just the NFL running out of crap to talk about, where they start talking about potential trade scenarios where people would move up into the draft. Like nobody's moving. Nobody knows like how things will develop into the draft. You know, every time the draft begins, players only move up depending on how the board falls. Like everybody, and this is from what I've heard from Sean Payton and many other head coaches, where they say if you're picking at 13, then you have to have 13 players that you love. What is with you? You have to have 13 players that you absolutely love if you're picking at 13, and the lower you're picking, the harder it is. But you'll also have one or two players where, let's say you're in the second round, you're in the middle of the second round, and you have one or two players that you're like, if somehow this player falls past the first round, we would move up in the second round to get. Okay. But here's the thing, we don't know who those players are for what teams. So you could say, oh, you know, they probably move up here, they move back, but we don't know, you know, who is the apple of their eye? Who are they following? Who do they love? And sometimes the players that these teams love will really surprise you. I don't think many people would have thought that Taysom Hill would have been a player that Sean Payton ever really was in love with. You said nobody ever apologizes, so my apology. Oh my God. No, I'm saying nobody in the media apologized when they found out that it was the Packers holding up the trade. It was not Aaron Rodgers, but yeah, he's just very hated ever since 2020 for God knows why. Um, so yeah, that's just the whole thing about the trades that I just I don't even like getting into those scenarios. It's fun, but as far as actually reporting news, it's just all so deep into the speculation that it's like not even worth bringing up. Now, I will say the I've heard a couple stories about CJ potentially falling, and I was looking into that, and I was like, why would CJ Stroud be falling into the draft? And it turns out that it's going to probably, from what they said. Now, some people are saying that anonymous sources are lying. And look, this happens every time the draft comes. Apparently, this was reported by, who is it? Who was it? God, I was just watching it today. It was Brady Quinn, I guess, first reported it. And I believe he's being sued now because he reported that he may not, he may fall in the draft because he signed up for Manning camp and didn't go to Manning camp. And I thought, well, that's kind of dumb because first off, you know, that's such a minor thing. And second off, when you were signed up for going to Manning camp and where you're at now, like if you're still a second overall pick, potentially, maybe even the first overall pick, why would somebody be holding a grudge that you didn't go to Manning camp? That just seems so silly and minute for somebody to be mad about that. So, this is sports media. This is terrible, terrible sports media. And you have people apologizing. Now, there are some great people in the sports media world that don't even tell anybody anything unless it's confirmed by multiple sources over a 1 week time. But then you have players and you have people that are just so desperate to make the headlines, for the ratings, whatever, that they just say shit and it's not even true. CJ Stroud getting passed up on because of missing Manning camp is about as believable as, that the sun isn't going to go down at the end of the day. I just I don't know anybody that would care that much about something, especially at his age now. Especially at now, if and I will say, as you go higher up on the draft board, people care less and less about character flaws of that nature. Now, the big character flaws, like the one where we saw Georgia speeding and people dying and stuff like that, like those will still matter. But missing Manning camp, no, that matters for the guy that's in the fifth round that is trying to get picked up potentially. But the guy going first overall, not getting passed up on because he missed Manning camp, dude. Somebody was so excited when they found out that CJ Stroud didn't go to Manning camp, that he missed it, and they thought we can connect some dots here with the Colts. And next thing you know, you got a story. And this is 100% just one of those stories that is completely man-made. And I think it would have been a much cooler story to just say CJ Stroud missed Manning camp when he was younger. That's the end of the story. It's informative and it's true. And if we want to draw those conclusions ourselves, we can do that. But now, if you just Google CJ Stroud, look at this: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Every article is about anonymous sources are lying about Ohio State CJ Stroud as draft stock falls. I mean, I think sometimes too, and this is why sometimes people will put those stories out on purpose to try to get a player to fall. Like, imagine if somehow Seattle was pushing these stories out so that CJ Stroud would be available at number 5 or number 6 so that they could draft him. And Steve said it's kind of rough tonight, but they proud of those little bastards. I heard it had something to do with him having issues studying film and game planning that was leaked out, being compared to Kyler Murray and Jamarcus Russell. Jeez, Jamarcus Russell. I look, I think it's just that time of the year where people are just looking for something to like I said, is it planted? Maybe. It might be planted by the organizations that are hoping that specific players fall. Do I believe that there were actually teams calling San Francisco to inquire about Trey Lance? No, I don't. I believe that the 49ers put that story out so that they could get some phone calls to inquire about Trey Lance. And I feel that way, about a lot of these stories that are coming out right now. I think it's Pat McAfee so they can draft him at 4. Um, maybe, and Ginger just said I'll take him at 4 all day. Look, I don't see a scenario where CJ Stroud is going to fall to anything lower than number 2. I just don't. And if one of the players had to fall between Bryce Young and CJ Stroud, I personally, I think it would be Bryce Young. I don't think it would be CJ Stroud. Because if you're telling me you have 2 players that are, I'll take either of them. You can't go wrong with either, which is what we've heard. Well, then give me the bigger quarterback prototype, somebody that will stay healthy longer, somebody that will be harder to bring down, somebody that will be able to see over the lineman, making throws, not having the Russell Wilson problem where he's not throwing any balls in the middle of the field. Give me CJ Stroud. If you're really that torn on him, then you're going to go towards CJ Stroud. You're not going to go towards Bryce Young. And now you're trying to tell me that CJ Stroud is going to be falling for who? In exchange for who? Will Levis? No, not happening. Not happening at all. And anybody that would believe that, I mean, here's the other thing. The only way CJ Stroud could be falling is if somehow we were lied to all offseason about CJ Stroud's draft stock from the very get go, from all the organizations and all the media. So everybody was lying from the beginning, and nobody was ever this high on CJ Stroud. But we had to fill in the blanks for ourselves, so we threw him in there at 2. That now, if that is true, then what about after the combine, after the private workouts with Ohio State, after the combine videos that we released? Because all the players or all the guys, the reporters saying CJ Stroud put together one of the best workouts that they've ever seen. If his draft stock, let's say, was a lie up to that point, after that point, I bet it wasn't a lie anymore. I mean, he went out there and he had a great day throwing, and that kind of all lined up with going number 2. So I don't know. You guys are gonna have to decipher all this for yourself, but I don't think CJ Stroud drops past number 2, but I do think there's somebody out there that is desperately trying to make it happen. There was also rumors going out that the Philadelphia Eagles were in contact with Tennessee about acquiring Derrick Henry, and we just heard Tennessee's GM say, I think it was about a month ago, that Derrick Henry is a vital part of the team and that they were never calling to try to get him traded. And then, what is it, a couple weeks later that we hear, oh, the Eagles are trying to acquire Derrick Henry. And it's like we just did this story, and now here we are again. And now this was the general manager, Ron Carthen, at what is that, 3:18 Eastern time, who had to go on the record again and say that he hasn't received any calls regarding the dominant running back Derrick Henry. The comments echoed the GM's stance last month when he called trade reports regarding King Henry erroneous. So nothing has changed, and now here he is going on record again to have to, you know, this is the weird time of the year where it's every single, bullet point of something that I would talk about on this show is a lie, or some, besides the Aaron Rodgers news. It's just, you can tell that you got a lot of reporters that are getting antsy, and you got a lot of people that are just looking for something to talk about. And we're almost through it, and we're getting through it together as a channel. More than a month removed from Austin Ekeler's requesting his permission to seek a trade. Ekeler also said he's probably going to end up playing for the Chargers this season. Ekeler remaining on the Chargers, plans remain unchanged by their backs' hopes of a bigger payday or a new landing spot. So he said, so this was about the 2023 NFL draft plans. And he said, I don't think so. Chargers general manager Tom Telesco said Monday of Ekeler's situation changing the team's draft strategy. We had Joshua Kelly and Larry Roundtree here. Then we drafted Isaiah Spiller last year. Isaiah kind of fits in the category of players from previous draft grades that can step in and fill needs. typically, like in this year's draft, not a lot of guys are going to come in and fill a need. When you look at the draft, when you draft players in the third, fourth, fifth, sixth rounds, people think that they are going to come in and immediately fill a need. You hope they can come in and earn a role. And that's pretty damn true. Especially if you ever watch Hard Knocks, you think, oh, yeah, we got this guy. So I've seen the Broncos draft players, and we get to the, training camp. And a couple weeks into training camp, it's knocked on the door, and coach wants to see you bring your playbook. And that's just the way it goes sometimes, even in with the players that you draft. Now, I wouldn't say the third, fourth, fifth round. Those guys are pretty safe because you just drafted them, and most GMs don't want to be wrong. So even if they're wrong for the time being, they'll kind of dig their heels in and hope that that player develops into something because that GM's credibility is kind of on the line there. But those sixth and seventh round picks absolutely have to come in and immediately, or they do not come in and immediately fill a role. If anything, they come in and they just try to earn a, a spot in the 52 man roster. And a lot of times they end up on the practice squad. So they're just asking about Ekeler in the Chargers and if they plan on drafting a running back because of Ekeler wanting money, yada, yada, yada. But the point is Ekeler said that he wanted to, bet on himself was his exact words going into this year. So he's going to go out there and play the best season that he can. And he played a really good season last year. What's his name? Williams from Detroit. What am I? Jameson Williams? No, why am I drawing a blank right now? Hidden Village dude, undercover hidden belly dungeon of the den. What's his name? The Pokemon guy. Oh gosh, this is gonna bother me. What is his name? From Detroit. What the hell is his name? Williams. Jamal Williams? I think it's Jamal Williams. He was Packers running back, then he went to Detroit. Jamal Williams. Yeah, Jamal Williams. Gosh. Okay. So it's the same thing. He said so. Jamal Williams had the 17 rushing touchdowns, and then right underneath Jamal Williams was Austin Ekeler, and I believe so. I got to double check that. But Austin Ekeler, especially after week 2 Thursday night with the torn rib or broken rib cage that Justin Herbert got, he couldn't throw anything downfield. Everything was dink and dunk and 5 yards downfield. So Austin Ekeler was the entire offense. So this was probably the right time for Austin Ekeler to try to get more money, especially when you see now looking back that he may have, taken his last deal at the wrong time. Everybody started getting paid differently immediately after. So he's going to bet on himself. So he's not going to hold out. So the point is you got a guy that says he's going to bet on himself. That means he's going to play the best football that he can. He's going to be as motivated as he's ever been. So you don't need to draft his replacement this year. I mean, you might go for somebody in, the third round, but don't expect Austin Ekeler to be much of a mentor. It's just not very promising. I don't know how I'd feel about, a team deciding not to pay me to bring in a rookie. I mean, who knows? Maybe he's a good sport about it, but I doubt it. Ekeler in Philly would be sick for a couple of years. He's so versatile. Yeah, dude. Philly is I feel like Philly's just one dynamic weapon away from just going back to the Super Bowl. I already think they probably will, but just to like cement them in that spot, I think they need one more player that is like Austin Eckler, Derrick Henry, whatever. Ginger, I think that Titans wasted their chances at a Super Bowl appearance holding on to Tannehill. Ryan Reynolds, Jamal Williams. Deadpool is always the correct answer. Yeah, Ryan Reynolds was way off, I have to say, unfortunately. But I'm also, and you guys take it for what it's worth, I'm not a huge fan of Deadpool in general. And I don't know how to explain this. Ryan Reynolds' humor to me is very, like, is very awkward, and I feel it like it's forced. Awkward and forced. It's like you know that you're supposed to laugh. It's almost like a one-liner, but it's just not funny at the end of the day. And I've asked a lot of people about this, and they're like, "No, man, like he's funny." And I finally got somebody came into the movie theater around where I live, and he said, "Yeah, no, it totally feels forced and it's corny." And I was like, "I feel that way too." Vince Vaughn, in my opinion, is hilarious. Will Ferrell, those type like I feel like those guys are really funny. And then Ryan Reynolds is just I don't know. It's like a take it or leave it thing for me. I'll probably leave it. It's just not that funny to me. He did just buy a huge portion in DraftKings. He sold his company for $1 billion or something. And I guess he invested a lot of that in DraftKings. So I think we're going to get some Ryan Reynolds DraftKings commercials pretty soon. Ginger's like, I don't think he's too funny. Deadpool was awesome, though. Okay. Just had to throw that out there. A little side tangent there. Some people think he's really funny. You know, I respect it. Just don't see it. And Anthony Richardson has considered himself an alien. I don't know if you guys heard. Wow, this is crazy. This story was on NFL.com. And this is a town that I actually lived in when I was a teenager. I was 18 years old and I lived in Ponte Vedra Beach. And I clicked on this story with Anthony Richardson, and the first thing it says is Ponte Vedra Beach, Florida. Anthony Richardson downs his second Red Bull of the morning and springs into a handstand. He holds it steady on the turf for 10 seconds. Then he leaps back to his feet, grabs the football, and dances while posing for cameras there to document his workout. It's a sign that he's at home here. He's 2 hours into throwing session just before Florida's Pro Day. That's weird, though. Is he from Ponte Vedra? Why would he be in Ponte Vedra? Because the University of Florida's in Gainesville. He's on the verge of realizing his childhood dream of becoming a first-round pick in the NFL draft is about to happen. This would be the most stressful situation for most. Richardson is at ease. Surrounded by a team of people he trusts, he can truly be Ant, a big, playful kid who flashes a magnetic, caring energy, yet remains intentional in conversation. 6'4", 244 pounds, quarterback loves to push his body to the limits. Richardson hit his first backflip in second grade, his first dunk. That came in seventh grade. By high school, he could dunk from the free throw line. He assures me he's a better basketball player than every other quarterback prospect in this draft class. Richardson said there's something about flipping and jumping that brings him joy. I watched him casually sling a ball 67 yards off one leg, his body contorted like Derek Jeter making a web gem, and nail his receiver in stride. That's hot. He was graded as the most athletic quarterback tested at the NFL Scouting Combine since 1987. He's not afraid to show what he can do. As a player, I'm not human. I'm an alien, Richardson tells me in a voice so deep it's startling. I don't think I can be compared to anybody. As a person, I'm normal, just a fun loving guy who likes to make people smile. And I have been reading a lot about this guy, and everybody says he's this big project. He's big project. It's going to take time, but I'm I'm wondering who's going to draft him now. If if Richardson falls to 5, I think because Seattle, I believe, is picking at 5. I think Seattle would pick him. I really think Seattle would pick him and then have Geno Smith kind of mentoring him for the next couple years. Um, Ginger said Will Ferrell's in a league of his own, though. Old School is probably my favorite comedy up there with Superbad. Being a stoner, I love Pineapple Express too. I love Pineapple Express. Wedding Crashers has got to be on the list, though. Wedding Crashers is top tier. I never liked him in any of his movies, but I thought he was 100% perfect for Deadpool and played it just like the comic book character. Yes, sir, Steve, I agree. Flipping and jumping has nothing to do with reading a defense and making decisions, though. That's true. That's true. Now, I think what this boils down to is like, is there a chance that Anthony Richardson could rely on sheer athleticism to get by in the NFL? Uh, maybe, maybe not. I can think of another person that was probably the most athletic person I've ever seen, and it didn't translate the way we thought. Reggie Bush. Reggie Bush was supposed to be one of the most amazing running backs we've ever seen, and I would say he had a good career considering how many people are bust. He wasn't a bust. He just was a bust compared to the expectations. Reggie Bush just never was what he was in college in the NFL because everybody's fast in the NFL. And Anthony Richardson pushing these stories about being an athlete, trying to give himself an edge. I'm sure his agent paid good money for this story to be front lines. Excuse me. East Coast time. I'm still in jet lag over here. Apparently, you're supposed to hug a tree to get the jet lag to go away. I haven't hugged my tree yet. But anyway, it's supposed to ground you. I think his agent probably paid a lot of money for the story to be put out there and try to, get this story going so that maybe he would be picked up. But we'll have to wait and see what happens right there. Um, I still, as far as my personal mock draft goes, which I haven't really released anything official because for the most part, I think mock drafts are, I don't want to say a waste of time, but they change so much that it's hard to even, have a, realistic idea of what's going to happen. What is that yawn? But I do think CJ Stroud goes number 1. I think CJ Stroud is going to be the first quarterback taken, and then Bryce Young will be number 2. And I thought that for a while. Now, if what I'm hearing from all the media is correct, Bryce Young's going to go number 1, and CJ Stroud is going to go number 2. But then what's going to happen after that with Will Levis and Anthony Richardson? That's going to all be really interesting. You have Marvin Harrison Jr., you have Sean Clifford. So one of the guys that I respect a lot is Kyle Schrader. He's on Good Morning Football. I had his pulled up here because I wanted Kyle Schrader. Good Morning Football. No, or Peter Schrader, not Kyle Schrader. Peter. He's one of the people that he's in those meetings. He's really involved in the NFL world. So I kind of take his mock draft for what it's worth, but it's like even a guy like that. Trying to see who did he ultimately say was going number one overall. Oh, he said, okay, so he said if he was a GM drafting, he would draft CJ Stroud over Bryce Young. So that is pretty big. And now the latest mock drafts that are out there with, let's say, Yahoo Sports, they have CJ Stroud dropping all the way to what? Number 4, which is a huge drop when you think, number 1. So they have CJ Stroud dropping to number 4, which would go right to the Indianapolis Colts. I forgot Wedding Crashers for sure. That's up there too. Reggie Bush may have been the best college player. I remember watching. Mike Vick was up there too at Virginia Tech. Both were electric to watch. He was too small for the NFL, but he still had a great career despite. Speaking of great college players, Harrison Jr. may be the best receiver I can remember seeing in college. I watched almost every Buckeye game this year, and he was the best player on the field every time, no doubt. And I'm a huge fan of Marvin Harrison, and I know you are too, because Colts, you love the Colts. But that doesn't surprise me at all, and it's hard not to be biased. Okay, Marvin Harrison Jr., just because of who he is, does that elevate his stock? Probably a little bit. But like you said, when you watch the games, he's the best player on the field. And I think that's going to translate to the NFL. And how cool is that we get to see? I mean, in one way, you feel like you're getting old, right? Because you saw his dad have a whole entire career, and now here's his son about to be in the NFL. It's just it's weird. It's weird. It's the first time it's happened in my life that somebody I grew up watching had a kid that is now in the NFL. I'm trying to think if there's anybody else that I can think of. Christian McCaffrey. His dad, Ed McCaffrey, was the Broncos wide receiver. But that was a little bit before my time. And besides that, I think that's the only person I can think of. Yeah. Peyton Manning's brother, Cooper Manning's son, is about to start college at Texas. So, that's right around the corner. I hope he goes number 1 overall. If you ask me, if it were up to me, there would always be a Manning in the NFL, because the NFL is in better hands when there's a Manning in it. Mannings are just great for the NFL. Peyton Manning left a giant hole in the NFL that has yet to be filled, if you ask me. With all the talent that's going on, you think about these young quarterbacks, how good they are. You think about Josh Allen, Joe Burrow. You just don't quite have the sheriff. You know what I mean? You have a lot of really cool young quarterbacks. You have, a Brett Favre-ish quarterback in Josh Allen, but as more of an athlete, but still country guy from Wyoming. But you just don't have the sheriff. The sheriff. There's just not. Who's the sheriff? Who will be the next sheriff? I think it'll be Cooper. Cooper would have to be it. Um, Ginger said in here, he said when a story came out that he got back from one of his 150-yard, two touchdown games, that he worked out on the jugs machine for 2 hours. He literally said the jugs machine was his best friend. He has that work ethic. You know what's funny is his dad also loved the jugs machine. His dad would train with that machine. And I remember as a young kid, I just always thought the receiver position was so cool. I loved Torrey Holt. I don't know if you guys remember Torrey Holt from the Rams, but I was such a big Torrey Holt fan, and he said he would catch 100 balls every day from the jug machine. Marvin Harrison was big into the jug machine. And I bet you anything, Marvin Harrison raised his son up with the jug machine. And I wanted a jug machine as a young kid. I was willing to try to save up for one, but they were, over $1,000, and for a young kid, that's not an obtainable amount of money. But man, I am not surprised that the jug machine is in the bloodline. I will forever feel robbed not getting to see Brady compete son against his son in the Super Bowl. I believe you're saying son. Imagine JSN and Harrison playing together last year. Either Stroud, my goodness, with Stroud. Oh, okay. I remember watching Josh Allen his senior year against Auburn. I said he was going to suck in the NFL. I was way wrong. Yeah, and that's just some of us, even the people that get paid six figures to get this stuff right, they can't get it right. You look at, Brock Purdy being the last pick in the draft, and you look at Zach Wilson going number 2 overall, and look no further. There are people that get paid six figures that suggested Zach Wilson go number 2 and Brock Purdy go undrafted, essentially. And that just shows you that there is something, even if you're an evaluator, there is something that is, I don't want to call it like a variable, an X factor. There's something that cannot be measured no matter how much film you watch. There is something about going and stepping up, lacing up those cleats, and going out on an NFL field and playing against an NFL defense where you can almost throw away everything you've ever, studied and figure out what a man's made of. Like you do have your exceptions. We knew Trevor Lawrence was going to be good. We knew Joe Burrow was going to be good. Those are the last two quarterbacks I remember being like, absolutely, those are the guys that are going to be very good. Never had a doubt in my mind. Trevor Lawrence was graded only as high as three other quarterbacks, and that was Peyton Manning, Andrew Luck, and John Elway. So yeah, I knew Trevor Lawrence was going to be the real deal. But once you get into these other quarterbacks, like if you don't have that surefire guy, there's no Trevor Lawrence in this draft. There's no Joe Burrow in this draft. Here is the kind of not feel good thing to say. There is a chance that none of these quarterbacks become special. There is not, that exists. There's EJ Manuel. You remember who EJ Manuel was from Florida State? There's a chance that we have an EJ Manuel in this draft. Who is the quarterback that just he went to Houston last year? Then he was in the Chargers with the Chargers. I can't remember him. I believe he had a skull injury or something like that, and he was trying to get healthy. You would know his name if I said it, but there's a chance that we just have a lot of journey quarterbacks, and there isn't an actual franchise guy in this draft. But we like to, every year, no matter who's in the draft, we like to crown somebody a franchise quarterback, the best quarterback in this draft. This guy has all the tools in the belt to take his team. Yeah, but it just doesn't always work out that way. There are drafts where there's no quarterbacks that are produced in the NFL. Just Google bad QB drafts and you'll see it. The best quarterback that came out of last year was Kenny Pickett. Now, when you consider how bad the quarterbacks were last year, then you could understand why this year their stock might be a little bit higher. Imagine if this draft happened right after the, 2 seasons ago, where what was that Trevor Lawrence's draft. I mean, I just I'm not saying that they're all going to be bad. You may have one guy in here that is going to be a good quarterback, but you may not. That's all I'm trying to say. There may not be anybody here that is going to, be around in 10 years. But if I had to pick one that would be, I would probably go with CJ Stroud. I would probably go with CJ Stroud because, like you said, all that athleticism that Anthony Richardson has doesn't really matter if you can't read a defense. Um, because at the end of the day, you're playing quarterback and you need to be able to pick apart defenses. You need to be able to do that. I look at Bryce Young and I think, look at Tua. The guy can't stay healthy. When he's on the field, he was really good last year, but he also has the most explosive wide receiver group in the NFL and one of the best young offensive minds in the league, coming from the Kyle Shanahan coaching tree in Mike McDaniel. And he made the most out of Tua, but Tua couldn't stay healthy, and there's concerns there with his size. Russell Wilson has size issues. People say, "Oh, it worked out for Russell Wilson." Last year, he was hurt for multiple games. He was hurt with the same injury for multiple games, and he came back, got injured in a different way, hurt his ribs. He's throwing interceptions and blaming an injury when it was just terrible reads. Like, he can't throw into the middle of the field because he's not tall enough to see over his linemen. You don't want a small quarterback. I just there's no good example of a quarterback. Even Drew Brees was way thicker than CJ or than Bryce Young, and I know that they've shown the 200 and some pounds. How much sand did they pour in that young man's shoes before he jumped on the scale? Because I'm all of 195 pounds, and I see CJ Stroud walking up. Now, maybe he just looks smaller because he's standing next to CJ Stroud or other football giants, but he just looks like he's going to get snapped the first time, whoever is running at him full speed. You think of some of these hard-hitting players. Thank God there's no Troy Polamalu or Ed Reed or John Lynch in the NFL right now. But still, man, you look at the Rams, you look at Aaron Donald, and some of these guys that if they get their chance to put their hands on Bryce Young, like you do have those concerns if he can stay healthy and have a long career in the NFL. Now, what good is a franchise quarterback if you only get to have him for 5 years? Then you're just like Carolina. Carolina in the time, think about this, the time that the Packers have had Aaron Rodgers, since today Aaron Rodgers is officially a Jet. This is a great example. They had Cam Newton drafted in, what was it, 2010, I believe, was Cam Newton drafted. I believe it was 2010. It was 2011. Aaron Rodgers had already won a Super Bowl. A Super Bowl when Cam Newton was drafted with the Green Bay Packers, because Aaron Rodgers won in 2010 against the Steelers. 2011, Cam Newton gets drafted. 2015, he's in the Super Bowl against Peyton Manning, and Von Miller strip sacks him like 3 times, ruins his career. This is only 4 years after he was drafted. He was never the same. So there are players that will come in and be your franchise quarterback for only 4 years. Only 4 years, man. So, I mean, all I'm saying is you only got 4 years with the guy. How great of a franchise quarterback really is that? Um, Jonathan says, "Where's the Bronco gear, bro? I'm on a vacation. It's not even a vacation. I'm handling a family issue, so I'm out of town, but I'll be back on Thursday in the regular spot. I agree, availability is important, but they say it's the best ability. Yep. Availability is the best ability. That's horseshit, though. I could be available every Sunday, but we're going 0-17, and I'm probably going to die. Well, I think they mean only within the players that are, top tier quarterbacks, right? The best ability is availability. They're just basically saying what good is a great quarterback that can't play? What good is a great quarterback that can't suit up on Sunday? Um, but yes, I mean theoretically, what good is availability if you suck? I see what you mean. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how it unfolds and who kind of becomes somebody. I mean, I'm not really high on anybody in this draft. I think CJ Stroud, if I had to pick somebody, it would be him. But no, I mean, this is not a Trevor Lawrence draft. This is not a Joe Burrow draft, but it's in the NFL's best interest to promote every draft like with all that hype. So there will be people that are really hyped, but like I said, for the Indianapolis Colts, I hope that one of these guys does work out. I'm not rooting for anybody to fail. I'm just managing expectations, and I think everybody else should too, because there's nobody in this draft that's like that guy. There's no Andrew Luck. And you'll know the difference too, because especially a franchise like Indianapolis, who has had a guy like Andrew Luck come in and, win 11 games as a rookie and take his team to the playoffs every year, you know, Andrew Luck could have been, easily a multiple Super Bowl champion if he hadn't retired. So you know the difference when you see it. So that's it. We're at the end. Maybe some more stories surface, trying to change the outcome of the draft with only a couple days left until draft. We have Tuesday, Wednesday, and then it's on. Basically, we only have 2 more days until the draft is here, and I will be back home in the studio when the draft kicks off. We're going to be going live for the draft. Jin just said, "Man, I miss the glory days with Manning and Luck." I know I miss my glory days with Manning. Just you don't realize how good you have it until it's gone. You only miss the sun when it starts to snow. Only miss the light when it's burning low. Only know you love her when you let her go. And you let her go. And that is my song for the day. As we close this one out, we are also doing a lot of interviews coming up. I got Ravens fan coming up. So definitely stay tuned for those to be released next week with the interview 32. Definitely, even on family trips, still working on some stuff for some interviews to come up. So I think you guys are going to enjoy that one. Ginger said, "Good luck with the personal stuff. Glad you're having a nice trip. Until next time, see." Absolutely. Go ahead and follow me on Twitter, and you'll see my Twitter name right there in the middle, at Star6 Media, and you can like us, subscribe to the channel. And Steve said, funny that the QBs considered the GOATs were not drafted in the early rounds. Yeah, yeah, because now you have Brock Purdy and Tom Brady. If Brock Purdy works out, Tom Brady's going to be pissed. Tom Brady's like the guy. It's like I was a 6th round pick, and then Brock Purdy's like, hold my beer. I was picked with the last pick in the NFL draft. There will never be a person with a better story than mine, unless somebody comes in undrafted. Those are, I mean, it's almost like a lucky spot. Now that Brock Purdy, it's like, who's going to be the next Mr. Irrelevant? Maybe we should start a tradition where we only pick quarterbacks at that spot with the last pick in the last round, just to see how it works out. Well, That'll be funny if they do it this year. If you want to know if they do, stay tuned to the Only Football podcast on Star Six Media. We're going to be going Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I'm going to drop the interview with the Ravens fans, stuff like that. So a lot of stuff coming your ways. Brock is not a GOAT yet, but I'm Brock hard for Brock Purdy. Brock hard for Brock Purdy. No, he's not a GOAT yet, but he is a baby GOAT, and he's never lost a game he hasn't broken his elbow in. So I'm optimistic, and I'm going to stay optimistic. But Manning was a first overall pick, and he is definitely one of the GOATs. John Elway, first overall pick, one of the GOATs. Dan Marino was not one overall. Like, you got your fair amount of good quarterbacks drafted number one overall. You got Matthew Stafford, Joe Burrow, Trevor Lawrence. Those guys are going to be good for a long time. But you also have a lot of shitty quarterbacks drafted number one overall. Jamarcus Russell. Man, I'm gonna print out a list of every quarterback first round bust since 2005, and I'm gonna rattle those names off next time we go live. But until then, I will see you guys in a couple days, and I hope you guys have a good week. Until I see you guys on Wednesday, actually, I will see you one more time here before I get up early Thursday to fly back home. So Wednesday, Only Football with Kyle will be here, and we will chat the day before the draft. And it'll only be a matter of time before I have my mic back, my background. Thank you guys for bearing with me. And I know that it is a little bit of an eyesore, but it's better than nothing. So I hope you guys can forgive it until I see you guys again. And until then, Konnichiwa and go Broncos. See ya!